Hi everybody. In this module, we're going to be jumping into how to create some really convincing metal based off of reference for our modular structure. So let's just dive right in. The first thing again that we want to do is start looking at reference. What is it that we're actually trying to accomplish with the metals that we're seeing? So for example, a lot of times you're going to have a hard time finding really good looking large copper or brass metal structures. It's not something you're going to find very easily. Oftentimes, old school teapots and things like that may be closer to what you're actually looking for. Now, you can find these things and you can find them being oxidized or damaged in some way. But the problem is that they'll often just get really, really dark and uninteresting. So there's a few pieces of reference here that I found to be very, very compelling. All of them have really interesting color variation, but it's not too dominant. There's not too much information or too much contrast. There's a lot of simple kind of color variation going on in here, and some staining and some adjustment of color, and some welds and connection points where things get a little bit sort of worn down and rusted in an interesting way, kind of oxidized, where the way that copper and brass, for example, start to rust is they start to get this kind of greenish color tinge to them. Now that is what I really, really wanted for this piece, but I only wanted a little bit. So the examples that I'm going with all have just a little bit of that going on in here, and I think that that is really what we want to work with. And you want to break apart how that works. So for example, you've got like a little bit of a dark edge that appears around some of this. In some cases, it's brighter towards the center and a little bit green at the edges, but it's a darker kind of color. Same kind of stuff can happen around here. These could be stains. But all of this is going to be what we're wanting to work with here. Some little bit of dust built up on here on this guy, for example. All of that is interesting stuff to work with. But the main thing I really like is this kind of color variation that we've got going on all over the place. As well as the fact that, for example, we've got this shiny surface mixed with some brush strokes of this darker kind of aged material. There's wearing down in the insides and shininess on the outside and darker kind of colors in here with a little bit of this oxidization. That, to me, is exactly what we want as a material for these surfaces. It's not really dependent on specific elements or anything like that, and it doesn't have too much contrast, so it will work really well on a modular structure. Now that we've got that established, for our next video, we're going to want to dive into how we can start building up those layers and layers of age on our metal.